morning and welcome back to Sherburne Public Library's Book Talk. This week, in honor of Black History Month, we are reviewing some movies featuring Black artists. It could be directing, acting, any piece of the movie. So I think Megan's going to start for us this morning.
Yes, and I am going to be talking about Harriet. This was directed by Casey Lemons, who is a Black woman, and also written by her and Gregory Allen Howard, who is a Black man, which is great. And I feel like we don't see a lot of Black female directors. So it stars Cynthia Erivo and Leslie Odom Jr., who is known for Hamilton. He plays Aaron Burr. And then in Hamilton, and then Janelle Monáe, who is a singer and actress. So it starts in the 1840s in Maryland. This is the story of course, Harriet Tubman. She was born, I think her name is pronounced Araminta. I think that's how you say it. They called her Minty. And of course, she was a slave. She ended up marrying a free man named John Tubman, which is where her last name came from. Basically, her owner died, and his son decided that he was going to sell her to someone else. And before that could happen, she decides she wants to escape to freedom. So she travels through the night. She ends up jumping off a bridge into water to escape this man. And they assume she has died, but she has not. She actually makes it to Philadelphia with the help of the Underground Railroad. And in Philadelphia, she meets William Still, played by Leslie Odom Jr., who is a well-known abolitionist. And he encourages her to take sort of a new name as a free woman. So she took her mother's name, which was Harriet, and she kept her husband's last name, which was Tubman. She also ends up meeting Marie Buchanan, played by Janelle Monáe, who is a free Black woman who owns like a boarding house that she stays in. A really interesting character. I thought was just really confident. She was born free, so it's just a really interesting contrast with the way that Harriet has lived her life. So she decides that she wants to return to Maryland and sort of help free the rest of her family. William Still is definitely against this because he's afraid that this is going to put her in danger and also put the Underground Railroad in danger. But she decides she's going to do it anyway. And she is aided by Marie, who gives her a gun, actually. Harriet Tubman was known to carry a gun when she was helping free people. So she returns to Maryland and helps to free, I think they said over 70 people in her lifetime she brought to freedom. And of course, she ends up having to deal with the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, meaning she can't return people to free states because they will just be returned back to their owners. So she ends up having to take people to Canada. She also was a Union spy during the Civil War, which I did not know that. And she did a lot for women's suffrage later on. And she also ended up living in Auburn. She settled in Auburn. I've been to her house there. It's really amazing. I highly recommend this movie. I think Cynthia is just amazing. Marie and I were talking about that. I actually sort of discovered her when she was on Broadway in The Color Purple, which I think she won the Tony for that. She was unbelievable. She also has a song in this movie at the end. I can't remember what it's called, but really amazing, like hauntingly beautiful song that was nominated for an Oscar. So good. Definitely recommend this one.
So the song you're talking about is called Rise Up.
That's it. Yep.
So good.
Yes.
I have every time somebody talks about Harriet Tubman, the first thing I say to them is, did you see the new movie with Cynthia Erivo? It's so good. It actually tells Harriet's history the way it's supposed to be told. And it's so good. And Cynthia Erivo is so good. And I love that movie. I really do. I saw it in theaters the week it came out because I was just so excited to see it. And like you said, Leslie Odom Jr. is in it, and I love him because I love Hamilton. And like you said, I also knew Cynthia Erivo from The Color Purple as well because that music is so good.
Yeah.
And of course, that was the book that I chose to talk about a couple weeks ago when we talked about stuff like that. So I love The Color Purple. This movie is just full of so many wonderful, wonderful actors. And you were talking about Janelle Monáe. Janelle Monáe is in my opinion, one of the best actresses in Hollywood. And she's not just an actress. Of course, she produces her own music. She does fashion. She does makeup. She does like hair and all of this stuff. Like she is just such an incredible human being. And on top of that, she is such a humanitarian, and like her contributions to the Black Lives Matter movement, amazing. Like I love Janelle Monáe.
Yeah.
And I could go on and on for hours about this movie. And when I was watching the movie, the fact that her name was Marie Buchanan, I was just like, her name is Marie. I don't hear that very often. Like usually if I had a nickel for every time somebody was like, "Oh, your name is Marie?" That's my middle name. I would be absolutely rich. I would be so rich because that's everybody and their mother's middle name. But it's a rare first name unless you're like living in France. That movie's so good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I also enjoyed the movie. I felt I learned a lot about Harriet Tubman in that movie. I felt like there was a really good treatment of her story, and probably, as Maria said, pretty true to her actual story. So I really enjoyed that because I knew about who she was. I knew she was part of the Underground Railroad, but I didn't know a lot of details, and I just thought that was and it gave me more insight into the Underground Railroad too, which I really enjoyed.
And I don't know that there's been another feature film on her before. I feel like
I
this may
don't
be the
think so.
first. So
Yeah,
it was definitely needed.
I think so. Yeah, so important.
Yeah.
They featured her story in other movies
Yeah.
that are about the time period, but I'm not sure there has been an actual biopic like this.
Right.
Yeah.
Sort of like how the one biopic of Will Smith playing Muhammad Ali was kind of the first of that kind, where it went into more than just what they're famous for and like talking about their lives. Because I'm pretty sure there is a movie about Harriet Tubman it's all about the Underground Railroad though. And so it's not quite the same as this of like origin story on top of later life. And because you were talking about her contributions to women's suffrage, which a lot of people don't consider.
Right.
Like everything that people know about Harriet Tubman has to do with the Underground Railroad. And it's like, guys, she was so much more than that. Like she was a suffragette, she was a dress reformer, she was like doing so much until like the day she ultimately passed away in her home in Auburn. Like she was also an early purveyor of desegregation too, before like segregation even had a word for it, you know? But anyway, she's just such a cool human being. And Megan mentioned that her house is in Auburn, which the museum,
Yeah.
so cool. Everybody should go if they
Yeah.
have a chance.
I need to go visit. I've not been there myself either. And I keep, hearing about it, seeing things about it in the news. I'm like, I have to go.
Yeah.
So maybe this will spur me on. Okay. So I'm going to talk about Fences, which is an adaptation of an August Wilson play of the same name. It stars Denzel Washington and Viola Davis. So to me, right there, you've got a powerhouse of acting ability. And this play is a powerhouse play. Now, it's not about anything, big or amazing. It's about their life. And, life can be amazing and powerful. But anyway, it's about this, mostly it focuses on Denzel. He's Troy Maxon. He is works as a garbage collector, but this is in 1950s in Pittsburgh. And it's not, at that point, Black men couldn't drive the actual trucks. They could only be riding in the back and pick up the garbage and put it into the back of the truck. So, he's that's what he does. So it's a very working class family. It's him and his wife, Rose, and they have a son, Corey. Corey is not, I don't believe Corey is actually Denzel's son in the movie, or I mean, in the story. So it focuses on, like I said, it focuses on Troy, and he used to be a baseball player, and he thought he was going to go into the major leagues, but of course there was a lot of barriers racially for African Americans at that time, and he was a really good player, but he could never break through the barrier. Later they talk about maybe it wasn't the race thing, but maybe it was because he had spent some time in prison too, which kind of, they said, well, maybe that was the reason you couldn't get into the major leagues. But anyway, he lives with his wife and Corey. He has a younger brother, Gabe, who was in the war, and he has a metal plate in his head now, and he's just not, he has a lot of psychological damage. So the government gave him some money, and he now lives in his own apartment, but he's not, he can take care of himself, but he's definitely not all there in his head. He's got some issues. But he's a very sweet character, and he has his heart's in the right place. Troy also has another son who's older, who by a previous, I don't know, his marriage, I think, he lives somewhere else. He's a musician. He and Troy have a very not a great relationship, because Troy thinks that he is just fooling around with music. He's not really a serious musician, even though I believe that he is. So it all comes down in the end, so you're seeing their life going along. Corey, his son, and himself. Corey's a football player in school who's the coach is saying, hey, I've got some college scouts coming. They need to look at you because you're a really good player, and we really want you to go into, this might be a chance for you to get out of this. And Denzel, or Troy, does not want him to do that. He thinks that he needs to work for a living, and that's going to college is not what he needs to do. So it all comes to a head when they find out that Corey is not continuing to do his after-school job like he was doing, because he needs to go to football practice in order to be good enough to make the college team. So he and Corey have an actual physical altercation, and Corey ends up leaving the house eventually. And then the next big thing that happens is we find out that Troy has not been faithful to Rose, and he admits to her that he's having an affair, and that the woman that he's having an affair with is pregnant. So that goes into a whole nother thing of, now what? And in the end, the woman that he's having the affair with has the baby, but she dies in childbirth. He comes back with the baby and basically wants, Rose to raise his daughter. And she says, she takes her a long time, and she finally says that she will. And she said, the line she has is, from right now, this child got a mother, but you, a womanless man. And then she's kind of estranged from him from the rest of his life. He ends up dying eventually. You don't really see all of that, but he's not a nice man. I found this whole the story was really tough, because first of all, it's Denzel Washington. I love Denzel Washington, and in this play, he's not a very nice man. He's not good to his family. Like, he takes care of them in the sense that he has a job, he pays for things, but he's not emotionally supportive and there for them. And it's a really tough play, actually. I mean, it's kind of devastating. but I really liked it because, I love plays where I can really see some really meaty subjects, and they really tackle that in this. I would highly recommend it for that. I mean, this is not your, fun, happy comedy. This is really not a comedy at all. There's the themes, they talk about, in Fences are race and barriers and the responsibility and love. And one of the interesting things is that Troy is building a fence around in their backyard. And the question is, his working partner says, is this fence to keep people out or to keep people in? Because his wife, I think, is trying to keep him in, keep him there with the family. But, Troy would probably say it's to keep people out. So it's just there's a lot of interesting allegory there. But I would highly recommend it. It won, Viola Davis won the Academy Award for a supporting actress for this movie. And, Denzel was nominated, and the adaptation, August Wilson he was posthumously won the adaptation for screenplay. Viola Davis won the Golden Globe again also, and Denzel was nominated. I'm surprised that Denzel didn't win because, I mean, they're both excellent, don't get me wrong, but that was, that was a powerhouse of a role. So, yeah, so I recommend it. It's tough. It's a tough play, but is it good. It's really good.
I love to see plays and musicals when they are able to put them out as films, and especially because they were both in the play on Broadway, and
Yes.
they both won Tonys
Yes.
on Broadway. So it's really exciting to be able to see that. I'm not able to get to Broadway that much. So
No.
to be able to actually see that from home with the original actors that were in it,
Mhm.
that's so exciting to me, especially when they both won Tonys.
Right. And Denzel directed this movie of it. And, he had so much invested, obviously. I mean, he played it on this character on Broadway for quite a few years, and, obviously was excellent. I love it. And I love it whenever they put a play in a movie so people can see it. Like you said, we don't get to Broadway that much, but if you can really get to see something of quality like this, that's wonderful. So Marie, you want to talk about yours?
Yeah, sure. Much like Colleen's, mine isn't really about anything that's like big, it's just about life. And specifically the life of a boy called Chiron. I am talking about Moonlight, which had its own heyday in Golden Globes, Oscars. Like, this movie won a lot of awards and was nominated for a lot of awards for very good reason. I don't even know how to start because it's just such a all-encompassing movie of everybody should watch this to learn something for so many different reasons, because this movie deals with what it's like to be a Black man living in a in a fairly not great neighborhood, and specifically the life journey of what that's like, and also being gay on top of that. So it really hits a lot of things, and I would say, with this shift I feel in society in general, of just figuring out that, hey, we should probably be better about stuff, and it's still slow, but this is definitely a movie everybody who's going towards that shift of anti-racism should watch. So it starts off, this is a movie told in 3 parts. It starts with Chiron, who is, I want to say, they don't tell us specific ages. They also don't tell us where specifically he lives, because I think part of the reason that they don't tell us that is because this could be any neighborhood filled with Black people, people of color, you know, that are generally discriminated against. And it starts in the early 90s. So I would guess he's like 10 or 11 at the time, maybe. I think he's in middle school at the time the movie starts. But the movie starts off with him being chased by a bunch of bullies because he is small. He's small for his age, and they all call him, everybody at school calls him Little. So that's the first part of the movie, is Little. It's entitled Little. And they're chasing him through this neighborhood, and he ends up in a really bad neighborhood that is full of drug dealers and just like a really bad neighborhood. And he is found by I'm going to say it right. Mahershala Ali's character. There we go. I put his first name and his last name together. Juan is his name. And he's a drug dealer who is dealing on that particular corner. And he finds Little, or Chiron, or wow, okay, Chiron, holed up in this like motel because he was running away from the bullies, and he was able to get in to keep them away from him. And so Juan comes up to him and is just like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, you should probably not be here, like, because this is a really bad neighborhood and you should probably go home. But Chiron like refuses to talk, because first of all, stranger danger, but also like he doesn't want to talk about it. He is a person of very few words, Chiron, which is the other thing that makes this movie so interesting, is there's not a lot of dialogue from the main character. It's everybody telling him how he should live and what he is supposed to be, and just stuff like that. And so eventually he convinces him to, Juan convinces Chiron to go and eat something because, you know, he probably hasn't eaten and they need to get dinner. And then Chiron keeps refusing to talk to him and tell him where he lives so he can take him home. So he eventually is just like, you know what? Fine. If you're not going to talk to me, you can talk to my girl. And he brings him home, and his girl, Teresa, is Janelle Monáe. I love Janelle Monáe. And I didn't realize she was in this movie until I watched it. And I was like, there she is. I love her. And so Teresa, Juan's girlfriend, finally gets Chiron to talk. And so they figure out where he lives, they take him home, and they realize that Chiron's mom is not a great human being. So there's that whole layer of it. And it continues on. The second part is about Chiron's life in high school and being bullied, figuring out that he's gay and being bullied, and just generally, you know, it's really bad. And his mom's drug addiction just keeps getting worse. And then the third part is Chiron in adulthood at that point. And unfortunately, Chiron, after being arrested for assaulting somebody who was assaulting him first, but the other guy wasn't arrested, moves to Atlanta, and he ends up becoming a drug dealer himself. So it's like you said, it's a tragic sort of cycle. But he ends up, I like to think at the end of the movie, he gets out of it because he goes back and he finds his childhood friend who used to hang out, and his name is Kevin. And they sort of confess their feelings for each other at the end. And it's a very good movie that everybody should watch. And I can't even describe the cinematography of it. The cinematography of it is absolutely beautiful. And it's just a really good movie. It definitely deserved all of the awards it won.
That sounds kind of amazing. Like you said, it's tragic, but I love stories that, I don't know, I love stories that give you some real life
Yeah.
things. I don't like, sometimes I don't like you to gloss it over. You really want to know the raw thing that's happening, and that sounds a lot more in that vein, similar to Fences, I think, in different style. But so in the end, do you feel it's uplifting in the
Yeah,
end,
I think
or
so, because what ends up
there's
happening,
hope?
yeah, so his mom, she checks herself into a drug rehab. So she's like doing
Oh,
better by the
good.
end, and she is planning on staying there so she can help other people as well. Um, what ends up
Yeah.
happening is he and Kevin haven't seen each other in like a decade. And so Kevin just randomly calls Chiron, and Chiron lives in Atlanta, which is, I'm assuming that their neighborhood that they were living in at the beginning was in Florida, like deep Florida, because Juan is from Cuba and his parents were immigrants. So I'm assuming that they're living in like deep Florida. And every time
Mhm.
Kevin talked about Chiron driving to Atlanta, he kept saying up. So I'm assuming that they would be in Florida. Um,
Gotcha.
and
Yeah.
uh, so he ends up going to visit Kevin back in Florida. There's a lot of hope at the end, because this is a very interesting topic just in general, of the general homophobia, especially in communities of color, particularly because of the the stereotypes that have already been set on them as Black people, and then having to deal with another stereotype of, dealing with being a gay person.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's just, that's a whole topic, and the fact that they addressed that topic in a way that was like, okay, like this is a thing, like that happens. And but they, at the end, they're like, oh, we kind of knew all along, but like, there, what were we going to do about it, and
Right.
Chiron talks about, because Kevin ends up having a child with a girl, just by accident, and Chiron near the end tells him, like, I haven't loved anybody besides you ever. And it was, the ending is good. But yeah, it's a great movie.
It's interesting how you were saying that the main character doesn't say a lot in the movie,
He doesn't.
but obviously he's got a lot going on, which is the total opposite of Denzel's character in Fences. That man never stops talking. I mean, he tells stories. He thinks he's pretty great, and
Yeah.
so it's interesting, those still waters do run deep,
Yeah.
um,
Well, no, and I was just going to say, I think that the movie is so powerful because of the fact that the main
absolutely.
character has very little dialogue. We
Right.
literally, like, half the movie is just watching him live
Yeah.
and be himself and go through life, and have so many other people just talking to him and talking at him.
Hmm.
And really, the only character that he is close with in the movie, that besides Juan, which Juan dies after the first part. They don't tell us how, but he does. And is Juan's girlfriend, Teresa, Janelle Monáe's character, where she is the only one who really is looking out for him and making sure that he's okay, and giving him a safe space to be. And just that. The other thing I want to talk about just really quick before we get to Megan's point is the discussion that they had. Juan and Teresa had a discussion with uh, Chiron about being gay, because he came after his mom had like yelled at him, because his mom just like assumes that he's gay. And like she was calling him the F slur and just like really terrible things. He went to their house after and asked them what that meant. And Juan says, which this is incredible that they had this discussion, but Juan says, it is a word that people use when they want to make gay people feel bad. And you never should have to hear that word. because you do not have to feel bad for being who you are. And you don't have to know yet, but like, if that's who you are, that's who you are. You should never have to feel bad about that. And then Teresa keeps going with that discussion of like, if you ever have to get away from your mom, if you ever need a safe place, like come here. And it's just, that discussion was probably one of my favorite parts of the movie, because it's so important of having that discussion with young people, because
Yeah. Yeah, it's important for them to feel that it's okay. And they don't need to tolerate that word. They don't need to make that word affect them.
Yeah.
So.
Sorry, Megan.
Oh, no, that's okay. What I was going to say was I didn't really know a lot about this movie until the Oscars, when they accidentally gave the Oscar to La La Land when it was supposed to go to Moonlight. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need to
do.
find out about this movie. But
Yeah.
I just read that it was the first film with an all-black cast and the first LGBTQ related film to win Best Picture at the Oscars, which is a little bit shocking, long overdue, I would say.
Yeah.
But I remember, I don't feel like it was that popular until it won the Oscar. And then it was like, people were like, I need to look into this. And that's kind of how I felt about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the one thing that that's a good thing about the Oscars, is sometimes they bring to light movies that the mainstream, country or world doesn't see. And sometimes that's a really good thing, because people need to see them, and they wouldn't just seek that out. I mean, you're choosing between, the next action flick by Bruce Willis and this very serious thing. And most people are like, I just want to go to the movies to like, forget everything and just veg out. And I'm not really like that personally, but a lot of people do that. So I think it's really important that those movies are recognized like that, because they, obviously bring awareness to things that need to be brought forward. So no, that's awesome. Well, this is good. We've got these are some good movies. I mean, high quality, good movies. So I hope you will join us next week. We're going to be doing children's picture books, I think, that focus on music and art, I believe. Does that sound right? Good. Okay. So we'll be back for that next week, and I hope you'll join us. Thanks for listening. Bye.